Why? Why did you do this to me? I never hurt you. I never asked for any of this. Don't you understand? I just wanted it all to go away, to escape. And you brought it all back. For what purpose? Everything is ruined, and it's all because of you.
The date was January 28th, 2017. I was on my old Windows XP computer and decided that very morning to upload a video on YouTube that showed me experimenting with the animation program Pivot Animator. I was given a showcase on how I do my animations in the program by reanimating an animation made by a YouTuber that went by the name SAD-ist. This YouTuber, which had around 630 subscribers, made an underswap animation that had popped off beyond 30,000 views, which was good for what seemed to be their first video. But besides an obvious undertale phase, the real reason I had made that video, along with two others which showed my progress, was because
I only do this when I see something amazing.
the final product, which I showed in my fourth and final video that I uploaded that day, was a decent but sloppy attempt at reanimating their video. Regardless, I still received 1 like on that video, presumably from my longtime supporter who teased me about it. Or it could have been another one who was liking my videos in an effort to get my name out there, in which case, shout out to them. But little did I know that this reanimation would be the first recorded instance of its kind when it comes to the widely considered legendary artist and animator SAD-ist, who would later go on to reach over 2 million subscribers following her own improvements in animation growth. But in order to understand how he got here and how it eventually led to her own career sabotage, we have to rewind the clock all the way back to 2016. SAD-ist supposedly created her YouTube channel on the 10th of September as my video shows. However, the dates overlap, as that's also the same day she uploaded her first animation on the channel, which was the underswap animation. But it currently says it's the 11th of September, so we'll just roll with that. From the very beginning, she was already breaking stereotypes, as her channel's profile picture was a frowning mask, which was uncommon at the time as most other masked personas had the detail of being smiley faces, indicating friendliness and companionship. But SAD-ist had found them overrated, and opted to integrate a sad mask to fit with the appearance of looking depressed and dysfunctional, even though she was friendly and a good companion to others. And even for her first posted animation on the channel, her animating ability caught not only my eyes, but also the eyes of many who took off to the comment section to give her compliments. From the early age of 13, she made her animation, Undertale phase, very clear, as she went on to post another Undertale animation the following week on the 19th, and then dropped 2 more on the 23rd, which was the day before her 14th birthday. Sometime later, she remained fairly active on her channel, posting 2 animations before she eventually posted her first full animation, which had most other Undertale fans in their feelings. More importantly, when she saw the positive feedback from this video, this made her more interactive with their small, growing community. At the start of the next year, 2017, SAD-ist would post her first animation of the year on the 12th of January, with this comment at the top of her description.
Yay! Another minute animation. Sorry if it's still short. Editing sound effects was such a pain. Glad I finished it.
This video increased her recognition not only in the Undertale community, but also the animation community. She even got recognized by the popular animator and creator, Animated Zorax, who she may have been a fan of.
This is awesome!
OMG! You noticed me! How?
But above that, she also attracted a certain community, a community happening to be that of Hamilton, with their slight lyrical reference, even confirming that she was a fan herself. But the move to lean more into this fandom with her own animations would prove to be one of the most popularizing moves she would ever make, with her first Hamilton animation practically spawning the fans into her vicinity. The amount of support and fans she got out of this video alone helped her skyrocket into popularity much quicker, with her Hamilton animation sitting at hundreds of thousands to millions of views today. But at the time, it only got her to around 2,000 subscribers. And although that was a very low amount, she was still amazed to have that many supporters, especially all at one time, even positively stressing out about it. To celebrate, she made a Q&A, where she shared more information about herself. Some of the notable questions were, "How old are you?" To which she confirmed that she was 14 at the time. "How long have you been animating?" To which she states that she had been animating for over 3 years at that point. But to add to this answer, she also answered another question where she said that she had been drawing for 10 years, which was a very long time for someone her age. "Who are your inspirations?" And she responded by bringing up a list of names, which wasn't the full one as there were many other people who inspired her. But among the names in the list were animators such as Jaden Animations, Camille Cuevas, Alan Becker, and Domix. But the 3 people whose works she had fell in love with were Toby Fox, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Mike Inall. Yes, that Mike Inall. Side note, I put that one in because I originally thought he was a weirdo, and after some surface level research and coming across some pretty questionable animations, I can comfortably say that he is. However, I didn't look into him in depth, so I'm not sure if he's done anything necessarily illegal, but I've got my eyes on you, Mike. Anyway, what do you get a face reveal? To which he responds,
Never!
What made you come up with the name SAD-ist?
I was making a name for YouTube, but instead I came up with a pun.
Actually, I do have a question. Can you do a voice reveal, Lenny Face?
I might do a voice reveal in the future.
Do you draw yourself without the mask?
You will never see the secrets behind this mask.
There were all sorts of other questions she answered which gave her viewers a wider outlook on her life, like her saying that she was self-taught and that animating is her hobby, something that she wanted to be a real job one day, with animating being her long-time dream, even wishing to go to an animation school, although her parents probably wouldn't have allowed her to. And while all of this is informative, one question would reaffirm her next upload, which would be absolutely massive. That question being,
Do you have any plans on animating animation memes?
Yes, I actually made one already. I'm gonna post it after this video. The animation doesn't involve Hamilton nor Undertale. It's about something else. A game.
and as she said, after this Q&A, she will go on to post her first most popular animation meme, a video which gained over 3 million views over a year of its release, one that also stands around 9 million views today. This is a video I believe to be her first trendy video, meaning a video where she followed the trends of the time, which she also rarely did. But on impact, this video alone received massive amounts of support. Even then, the SAD-ist still couldn't compete with the video I made 2 years later that sits at the throne of 295 views. Try to beat that, you won't, but what I didn't get was a public commendation from Ren7.
Holy buckets! Ren7, is that really you? Aww.
But the surprising thing about this is that SAD-ist became increasingly more active after her Bendy animation, uploading 2 videos not too long after it, and even integrating speed paints onto her channel. And despite being just a sped up video of her drawing, her audience was entangled. That was admittedly because they were surprised that she had used her phone and a drawing app for amazing drawings that could have otherwise been mistaken for a professional app or tool. But her next animation continued to attract the eyes of Hamilton fans, with animated Zorax showing support once again.
Nice animation, mate.
Oh, my. Hi. I thought you forgot about me.
How could I forget about such an amazing animator?
Cry! You're the one who's amazing! Thank you, by the way.
Along with the release of this video came the description, where SAD mentioned that she had made a Patreon after some people told her to do so. And with that, the formula had been set. Make an animation, get views and recognition by her favorite creators, and continue to get her name out there. When she had reached 20k subscribers, she made a thank you video, in which she screamed and flipped out over the overwhelming success she was getting. It was so strong, in fact, that her own mask had gained sentience, matching her own expressions. Keep this piece of lore in mind. In the video, she mentioned how she had no idea of how to repay her audience, throwing out the idea of a voice reveal, as well as planning to take a break from anime, but coming back with some other animation ideas. She also gave an official announcement about her Patreon and closed off her video thanking her viewers for getting her to this point in her life. However, it would be the next video in which she would play the piano, making a cover song. But it's at the end that we get this.
Hooray.
Voice reveal. Her last video of 2017 was a 1st of September upload, and where she experiments with a speed animation. It wasn't as well received, but entering her 2018 era, she would prove to make a very noticeable comeback. After a bit of a hiatus, SAD-ist came back with not 1, but 2 Mob Psycho animations, climbing back onto the circle of popularity. And while her videos didn't immediately blow up, over time her several animations would be seen by newer people who were just discovering her channel for the first time. And these newer supporters helped her maintain her popularity. But even with all of this fame, inevitability, at the end of her Oyasumi Hamilton animation, she talks about her supply for her audience demand, but mentions her loss of motivation at the end. Specifically, in the description, she says,
I'm starting to get tired of making animations. Maybe it's because it's really hard to draw on a phone. Or maybe I just lost the joy of animating.
Most members of her community were understanding, vouching for her to take a break and relax on the animation. This reassurance allowed her to calm down with all the animation, and instead opted to continue experimenting, with her getting into other fandoms and improving her craft in the process. She even took a big step to integrate her channel to more social media spaces, such as Twitter, although she wouldn't interact much on those websites until her big hit, which we'll talk about in a bit. But in 2019, it was her interest in a certain fandom that would get her into a lot more spotlight, that fandom being Hollow Knight. SAD's animation meme on Hollow Knight, which she released in May of that year, did numbers. With SAD's previous success on animation memes, a much more improved animation style, despite still animating on Flip-a-Clip, and the ability to attract swarms of fandom audiences, it was no wonder when her video would earn the views of over 370k just in the first 12 days. And from what I've gathered, there wasn't any teasing or anything, SAD just straight up dropped it, with a pretty hollow description. Her animation was so well received that even years later, people still come back to watch it, reveling in the fact that it was made by her. That's actually a theme that's played out through most, if not all of the videos I've mentioned that she's made. Her presence on both YouTube and in the animation community was felt heavily, and it just kept increasing. Even when her next upload was a compilation of unfinished animations, it popped off, with over 80k views in the first couple of days. And although she didn't say it at the time, I'm sure she was very grateful for the support she did receive at the time. Another neat detail is the fact that she had kept on using the same apps she had used around the start of her channel, like Metabang, which also showcased that the only instance of change was her. She had also grown to 90k subscribers, expressing thanks for that, and then a few months later, after a speed paint video, she had posted her first animation video that was over 2 minutes, of the Hollow Knight kind, with a song, pacing, consistency, and a full-on storyline. This was the indicator of a switch, of her different SAD-ist, who was quietly evolving to seemingly no end. However, in the year of 2020, SAD-ist would make a life-changing decision when she uploaded her best video to date, which is named Orb Love Tissue. This was uploaded after SAD-ist made a community poll wanting to celebrate reaching 100k subscribers, asking viewers what they'd rather want to see.
An original animated video that can maybe change your life. Or per video.
Unfortunately, they chose the animation video, but regardless, SAD-ist still uploaded her bird video on the 1st of April. I still think it's the best video she's uploaded, ever. This is also around the same time she became more active in the community tab section of her channel, teasing another Hollow Knight animation, which she would release not too long after. What seemed like an animation that would take a long time only took a week, paired with procrastination. Classic procrastination. That also continued combining elements of her animations, taking musical elements in Hollow Knight and molding them together to create her own rendition, with a bit of uncertainty because of her inspirations. But she made the eventual decision to just keep the video up, as her audience loved it, and at this point it seemed like she would just become a stapled Hollow Knight animator. However, her growing interest, or the lack thereof, would lead her to animate a video that would be the actual most life-changing one that she's ever made. And it all started with the community post.
I have the messiest sketch. Anyways, I was gonna do a BMC animation, but priority calls, and I'm making another animation. Again. Here's a rough sketch. I'd be surprised if someone managed to know what's going on, or guess what it is, or rather, guess who. I made a pun and probably no one would understand, so I'ma just go in the corner. Expect this to show up first before BMC. I mean, no, don't. I suck at my schedule.
And the GIF appeared to be a masked figure engaging in combat with some others, then throwing a potion, causing the scene to dissipate. If you were in the Minecraft community in any capacity at all during the time of this teaser release, this would immediately ring bells in your head, and for most people, it did. However, it would be the next post which revealed her on Flip It Clip, animating a section of Minecraft Manhunt featuring the one and only Dream. And all she had to say was,
You better watch out, you better watch out, you better watch out, you better watch out, you better watch out.
This post alone would summon only a small portion of Dream's stance.
Ah, you like Dream Team too!
OMG! You are one with a dream team called 2? Yeah! One of us! One of us! One of us!
One of us, one of us, one of us.
Dream Team! Plus BBH.
Dream team, dream team.
You get the point. Dream's fandom, or more of his standom, was an untapped goldmine, one that SAD didn't even originally care for. As in the description of her first Minecraft-related animation, she says,
It's my first time animating YouTubers. I'm no fan of Minecraft, nor do I play it, but boy, their manhunts look like action movies.
That's right. As nearly every other success she has ever received in her career, she didn't chase it. In fact, as mentioned earlier, this animation was originally a rebound, meaning that there was a high chance that she wouldn't have made this animation at all. The same one that would later integrate her into the entire Minecraft community. In the same video, it's also sit around 30 million views today. Just like all other ways of success, this tsunami would come hurtling at her, with the consequences nearly catastrophic in the best way possible. The animation itself displayed a more colorful and well-animated version of what SAD-ist was normally capable of. And as the video exploded in popularity, more and more creators in the Minecraft community caught wind of the video's existence, which in turn made them more aware of SAD-ist, which also connected her to their respective communities. Repeat this process a few dozen times, and you have swarms of fans from everywhere in the Minecraft community. If you liked both Minecraft and animation around this time, there was no way you wouldn't have seen at least a few seconds of her animations, especially with her transition into full-on Minecraft-related animations, most of which related to the Dream SMB, whose lore she pulled a great percentage of fans into. Regardless of which fandom her views had come for and from, no one could doubt the animated progress she had made over the years. But it was the Minecraft community in particular which had sent her platform to space, with her subscriber count reaching levels she never thought she would have gotten in such a short amount of time. And going through each of her achievements from this point on would not only make this video so much longer, but it would also make it tiresome, as the advancements she made in her career are both many and unparalleled. Fan art, collaborations, connections, networking, merch, YouTubes, lore, trading cards, FNF mods, unboxing videos.
What is this? It's just an unboxing.
You don't have to watch this. It's just me being happy with my new tablet.
And so much more. While other animators on YouTube were more recognizable and popular, SAD-ist didn't quite fit in with the group. She was always in a lane of her own, even from the very beginning, but taking on more widespread fandoms allowed her to crawl out of her comfort box and get more involved in the creator space. Just by the end of 2020, before she got to truly reap the benefits over the coming years, she had already been extremely grateful, making a tweet in which she showcased her gratitude.
I had so many really good experiences this year, mostly due to YouTube. I want to push this further, continue to create and improve, do new stuff, and collab with content creators. Despite having anxiety, I wanted to break through it. And thank you for being a part of my journey.
Fast forward to the Dream SMP era wrap-up, SAD-ist started to pursue more of her own interests, still slightly adjusting to not being overwhelmed by the community's fans, who eagerly begged her for an encore. This involved more relaxed activities such as posting her outfits on Twitter, in a move I like to call sad trapping. I mean, there was no reason for her to add the saddest filter to these images, that's just way too much aura. But seriously, with SAD being allowed more space, it gave her time to create her own first original animation, reaching back to her roots in the Philippines, basing her story off of Filipino folklore. She also used her platform to encourage others to help those in need whose livelihoods had been tainted by the Super Typhoon Rai, or ODAD. That wasn't her only act of charity though. She also paid respect and added a fundraiser to her tribute video for the late Technoblade. She didn't only raise funds for that video though, but she also applied to several other related videos on her channel, nearly racking up around $15,000 from her channel's donors. She even got into the Stanley Parable fandom, essentially creating her own alternate universe with her Clock Out series. She also connected with Genshin Impact fans with her sponsor animation, which she claimed was a nice breaker video while she continued to work on other projects, as mentioned in the description. But her fandom tourism would be put to a long hiatus as her Genshin video, which was made in 2023, is her most recent video at the time of this video's upload. But it wouldn't be until 2024 and the month of November where an internal issue involving SAD would boil up and eventually implode into a publicized controversy. The revelator of the drama went by the Twitter handle ZennXP, revealing years of what they claimed to be a questionable and morally unjust series of events that occurred, with both SAD and her friend Jay Graham as the forefront perpetrators. This obviously came as a surprise to everyone who came across Zenn's tweet, which linked to their 30+ page document detailing their experiences as staff and what went on behind the scenes. It especially affected those who had supported SAD-ist, long time and short. Almost instantly, her name became trending, as the document had been chopped out of context and more unsavory accusations began to pop up about her. With allegations such as SAD herself being a groomer and much worse, most people who hadn't read the document gained an unchecked suspicion of her, and those who had received a newfound hatred. Though, the situation would get even more confusing when SAD-ist made the decision to post her response, at first on her alt, then her main, and also when she deleted her Discord server in the process, making her appear even more suspicious. However, the final act would be that of her and Jay disappearing, with rumors of them lurking around on potential alt accounts. Although some of her audience had accepted her and Jay's apologies for what they had done, it still felt like SAD had something to hide, and this suspicion gave further leverage to Zenn, who had gained continuous supporters, and declared being furious with the way they had handled the drama. But back when the tweet first had been posted, I had been working on the mystery behind Kieran Dev's disappearance when I checked Twitter to see Zenn's tweet, and also got pinged in the Discord server by a moderator who had shared it on their behalf. Despite working on a video already, I made the decision to pay more attention to what was going on by archiving Zenn's document and screenshotting updates of some messages and responses that had been posted afterward. It was around that time that I had spent on the server when I remembered that I had my own past in SAD server, with old messages and events that took place that I had all but forgotten. And it was at that moment that the memories had come flooding back, and that's when I knew that this had to be a video on its own. But knowing the commentary space, I knew that vultures and leeches were going to come rushing out to see what they could reap from this drama for their own gain. However, after brushing over the details, I found that only a small circle of commentators did what they could to capitalize on the situation. I actually stumbled across one of them streaming it and... Wait, is that 9 takes? 9 takes. What did I tell you about being in random commentators chats? Do not make me use the stick, 9 takes. I'm gonna use the stick. Ugh. Can I just talk about commentary culture for a bit? Like, some people just go to so many lengths to reach out for a reason to genuinely hate people and try to bring them down. Imagine for a second if I tried to use that one color crew member who ghosted me in the previous video as a point to suggest that they're all terrible people, who gatekeep secrets and that Booster is secretly at the top controlling them all. One of the main points of that video was the reaching, ironically making Booster seem like the villain he clearly isn't. Unless... he is. But no, seriously he's not. We give that narrative to anyone else and they'll make a genuine takedown attempt at the expense of his career, which is just so scummy. Anyway, I find the belief that I'm obsessed with Boost for funny, even though that's not true. I mean, it's not like I was using any excuse just to include him into another video. That would be absolutely ridiculous. Moving on, in order to understand how this situation even occurred and continued to transpire, you need to understand the context from Zenn's perspective, along with my additional storyline. Let's take a walk back to when the height of the drama was increasing. Before anyone had known that the server was going to be deleted, I screenshotted a couple of my old messages to include in the video, not knowing that it would later become the only existing proof that I had joined it. And from here, I could build on what I remember about being in the server. Around a couple of months after it was created, and not that many days before Zenn began her official position as staff. Back in 2020, I was 14 and happened to stumble upon SAD-ist Discord server. And by the way, this took place not too long before the events of Anaanymous, which ultimately shaped me into who I am today. One recurring theme of mine that I've talked about many times before was my intuition, of knowing of people who will or have become famous. Take Kier Dev or Booster for example. And most of the time I predicted their success, I was right. For SAD though, I hadn't predicted her success, but knew of her way before she had gotten a taste of true success. And it was this very fact that led me to claim this right after joining her server. I can't believe she went from that underswap animation 643 subscribers to this. Well, I didn't know SAD-ist got this popular. And although it sounds like I was boasting, I was, even if unintentionally. I had this preconceived notion that because I knew of her before her fame, it made me more important. And reading back through my old messages made me realize how snarky, stingy, and obnoxious I was. I would often call out the moderator's biases and belittle their sensitivity. And although it seemed like I was right, I mostly just came off as pretentious. Also, side note, I should have taken more screenshots of this for proof because the only other screenshot I have is one that I took because one of the messages had the word hawk in it, like hawk to it. My behavior wasn't outright though. It was more sneaky, which could arguably be worse. But it would eventually come to a breaking point when I had a run-in with one staff member who made a decision that would change the trajectory of my life. On the other side of the server was Zenn, who was 16 at the time. She began as a volunteer helper in the server on the 24th of October. Her job was to act as a trial mod with the help and supervision from the official staff team. While I was messing around, Zenn was enduring her trial period until the 1st of November, when she had been officially promoted to a moderator. During her time as both a moderator and eventually admin, she became friendly and acquainted with several people, including SAD-ist herself and her friend Jay. While Zenn had maintained leadership in her role in a professional manner, that didn't stop her from being genuine friends with SAD and Jay, not focusing their relationships purely on social status and fame. And this worked for a time, at least until a problem started to arise, which she made an effort to confront. But before then, things were smooth. The server was growing. However, there was a tiny itch in the server's backside, that little feeling being me. To be clear, my recollection of what happened after this point is a bit blurry, as I don't know who the staff member was that I had an interaction with, but I only slightly remember what that interaction consisted of. So no, I'm not sure if it was Zenn, although that would be insane if it was, but I'm sure I would have remembered if it was her. Whatever the case is, the context for this interaction, which I believe took place in DMs, happened after I started moving weird. And by moving weird, I mean weird. I don't exactly remember it, but I did and said something weird in an attempt to get into contact with SAD-ist. And this resulted in that staff member confronting me about it. To just show the ridiculousness of the situation, let me just put it into a segment.
Let me tell her. I have something I want to say to her, and her alone.
No. Listen, I honestly don't know what you have going on, but you are not talking to her. How many times do I have to say this? SAD-ist is busy, and you won't be able to talk to her. However, I am willing to relay the message.
No. Get me into contact with her.
Did you really just add pitch to your voice and call it a day?
Let me talk to her. Please.
That's not happening. Do we really have to go back and forth, or am I going to have to remove you from the server?
Have it your way. What I'm requesting is simple, easy, and doable.
It's easier to just kick you. I've had my entertainment for the day. Goodbye, weirdo.
At least, that's the closest I remember it going down. And admittedly, after being removed from the server, I didn't mind long after. In fact, the whole series of events was so erased from my mind that it took the entire controversy to bring it all back. And now that I think about it, that staff member hadn't gotten me removed from the server, the Anaanymous events and my involvement in them would have played out a lot differently. But all it took was that one staff member's decision to drive me away on my own, which led me to my decision to join Anaanymous Discord server. And looking back at it now makes me almost want to thank them for getting me up on out of there, specifically because the controversy that would happen years later. And that controversy itself will manifest after years in the making following Zenn's promotions. With me out of the picture, along with every other tiny problematic occurrence that constantly ran up the server's spine, Zenn had gradually started taking a look deeper down into the server's issues, the ones she had with SAD and Jay. And it was on the fateful day of November 27th, 2024, when Zenn would come forward with her own experiences involving not only these two, but others as well. And this is where the video gets a lot more serious. Alright, here are the disclaimers from the original script. I'm actually going to make this quick because I accidentally wasted a lot of time. You see, for the original section of the main drama, I actually put a note to make sure to summarize it, but I didn't actually do that and ended up recording the entire thing, like all of my notes. This resulted in a week's worth of editing before I realized that I should have summarized it before showing it to y'all. So I basically had to start from scratch again, but fortunately this time it was way shorter and I was actually summarizing it. Something I literally put in my notes to do, but I didn't do it. So because of that, there's actually a dip in quality for some of the scenes, and that actually includes the entire section that I'm about to show you right now. But I don't want my time to have been wasted, so if y'all want to see a full video with the drama and that explanation, I can show y'all that. But yeah, after this section, the production quality actually goes up a lot higher. So if you're interested to see what that entails, then stick around. Again, thank you all so much for your patience. I really appreciate it. And the last thing is the character list for context. Let's start with the first part, which is the argument. The conflict originated in November 2023 when Zenn, serving as an admin inside a server, was involved in banning a user for inappropriate involvement with a minor. Although Jay had made a report to the staff channel and the user was banned, Zenn became concerned about Jay's continued interactions with mutuals of the banned user, despite Jay's clarification that these interactions were minimal and respectful, as with other members of the server. A significant point of contention arose regarding the victims, who are identified as P1 and P2. Zenn questioned P2's victim status since they weren't a minor, though Jay provided evidence of the emotional manipulation P2 went through to validate their experience. It was at that point that Zenn said that the victims had enough time to remove themselves from the groomer, which is a statement that lacks understanding and is simply untrue, as grooming victims can be conditioned to do otherwise. But as tensions escalated, Zenn considered creating a document about the groomer. Jay opposed this idea, citing the sensitive nature of the situation and the victim's request for discretion. It should also be noted how anxious everyone was about the situation, as both Jay and Zenn experienced physical symptoms of stress, with the thoughts of it causing Jay's chest to sink and Zenn shaking excessively because of it. However, despite this, Zenn continued receiving information from a third-party informant, overpowering her fears by feeling compelled to take action. The situation continued to intensify in May 2024 with arguments in Jay's server. At one point during a few voice chats, Zenn compared the situation to that of Wilbur's suit and Shelby's, and incorrectly assumed that Jay and the others were maintaining contact with the victim solely because of their art. Jay clarified that her continued contact with P1 was motivated by guilt. The tension became so concerning that SAD intervened, proposing a private group discussion between them to resolve the issues. However, Zenn rejected this approach, insisting on speaking with SAD alone about accountability and refusing Jay to be in their presence. During this time, another member, M2, observed that while Zenn's points may have merit, her aggressive and closed-mind approach was certainly problematic. Previously unspoken issues had also come to light when it was revealed that both Jay and SAD had been experiencing ongoing issues with Zenn prior to the arguments, with conversations about her reaching back to March of that same year. SAD in particular struggled with motivation and energy due to a role above these issues and ones outside of them. The situation took a critical turn when SAD shared her perspective on Zenn's style when it came to being an admin, describing it as controlling and pressuring to the point where SAD became uncomfortable speaking in her own server. She claimed that Zenn's obsessive behavior, which included tracking social media accounts and making harmful jokes that mostly affected Jay, created an uncomfortable environment. The conflict reached a breaking point when Zenn, under the influence, confronted Jay about various issues. During this interaction, a drunk Zenn claimed that she was the embodiment of what SAD disliked and accused both Jay and SAD of conspiring against her. This led to Zenn being kicked from the server after the argument had escalated. Following these events, attempts were made to resolve the situation. M1 requested Zenn's return to the server, and Jay worked to facilitate it. This eventually led to an extended debate between Jay and Zenn that lasted around 3 weeks. Other than leaving some notes about it, Jay didn't believe making a summary of this debate does it any justice. But for the purpose of fairness, I took this as an opportunity to look into the conversations myself, and I got 3 points out of it from the perspective of each side, capturing how they most likely felt.
Jay's statements and accusations are unclear, and although I try my best to explain my problems to her, she seems to pin the blame on me instead. My vocabulary and the way I address such things seems to be in a way she cannot understand, thus confusing me as well. If I have messed up or seem to have made a mistake, it doesn't justify her going off on me and drawing this out even further. P2's victimhood does not equate to the same level as P1. The fact that P2 is even considered a victim at all is ridiculous, as they are an adult and P1 is a minor. Although they do share some level of victimhood, P2 doesn't seem to be much of a victim. I'm not sure what you plan on doing with your examples, bringing up commissions, jokes, banter, etc. I believe others should be held way more accountable than me. To be honest, All this chatting is just making me realize how faulty our friendship is. I don't want to pain you any further, and we both know this isn't going where we want it to. So something has to change.
Zenn's wording and messaging confuses me to an unnerving degree. Every example I bring up seems to go right through her, and she always has an excuse for not understanding where she's wrong, or why things are the way they are. I still manage to bring example after example to prove my point, even though part of me knows it isn't ever going to connect. Several of her points are wrong, and that frustrates me, but it doesn't mean I hate her. I really don't want to hate her. I know she has an odd way of wording things, but her initial concern spiraled out of control and into this mess. And no amount of breaks in between our arguments ever seems to fix either of us mentally. At the end of the day, I don't want there to be any bad blood between us, although it seems like that may always be the case. No matter how deep we get into these topics and issues, I want to stay your friend. I really do, but you may be uncomfortable, and I don't think we'll ever be the same again. I'll give you some space. I think that's what we both need right now.
The situation ultimately concluded with SAD-ist deciding to demote and ban Zenn from the server. Although Zenn had claimed to have written an apology and done considerable self-reflection, planning to share it on May 26, SAD-ist was too exhausted to continue engagement. SAD's final resolution involved Zenn being asked to transfer her administrative responsibilities, including the staff Twitter and email, to Blake, who was another admin. But Zenn held her stance on not being available until the 26th. And as shown in the screenshots, both she and Jay, likely to the dismay of SAD, converged shortly for archival purposes. Next up is the NSFW Server. Jay and SAD addressed a series of events involving NSFW content and multiple individuals. They openly acknowledged their past actions without attempting to defend themselves, instead focusing on explaining the sequence of events that took place. The situation primarily revolves around Jay's creation of various NSFW spaces, including the server, group chat, and staff server channels. Jay also establishes age context, with Zenn being 20 years old at the time of writing, Jay herself turning 22, and SAD already being 22. The initial incident occurred when Jay was 18 and working as a moderator before becoming friends with SAD. She had created an NSFW account with over 200 followers and posted about it on Twitter. After Zenn approached her about it, Jay removed the tweet and reference from her bio, unaware that Zenn would later follow that same account. Both parties acknowledged that Zenn was 16 at the time and persistently requested access to Jay's private posts. Ultimately, Jay granted her access in a decision she deeply regrets and takes responsibility for. The situation evolved in SAD's staff server, which was called the Frown server, and also in the group chat where M1 had concealed their true age until late 2023. Jay explains that she was 19 during the time and her behavior was influenced by the lockdown, which began when she was 17. She acknowledges that she failed to mature appropriately after turning 18, though she emphasizes that this explanation isn't meant as justification. Despite knowing Zenn was 17, they allowed her to participate in their NSFW group, with Jay incorrectly assuming that it was acceptable due to Zenn's proximity of being 18. From SAD's perspective, the situation developed when she, Jay, and M1 began collectively showing an excessive amount of appreciation for specific fictional characters and artwork. It got to a point where M1 commissioned Jay for suggestive art and proposed creating a separate group chat outside the staff server for sharing such content. The group chat evolved from NSFW discussions to including actual artwork of characters. SAD, who was 19 at the time, explains that this was actually her first time drawing explicit content and sharing it with her close friends, getting caught up in the entirety of it. She shortly acknowledges her conservative Christian upbringing as context, but doesn't use it to excuse her actions. She also talks about M1 and their sophisticated understanding of NSFW content, which led her to assume that they were older. M1 later explained that they unintentionally presented themselves as older to various life circumstances, such as having a job, paying rent, and living independently. They claim that these circumstances, while unusual for Western folks, were normal in their Southeast Asian context. M1 also acknowledges their responsibility in seeking out NSFW content as a minor, though SAD maintains her accountability as an adult. The situation became more complex when Jay invited Zenn to the group chat, though SAD was unaware of Zenn's status as a minor until after Zenn had reached adulthood. Jay goes on to feel embarrassed about Zenn minimally censoring her art and explains the context of a private section in the Frown server shared between herself, SAD, Zenn, and M1. Jay takes responsibility for creating the images and artwork shown, while clarifying some misrepresentations in Zenn's document, specifically that M1 had voluntarily helped with sound for an animation, rather than being pressured to do so, and that a joke about an NSFW animation studio with the minor was made in poor taste. She also explains that her mentioned sexual dream about shadow creatures was actually just a crude attempt at humor. Regardless, Jay takes a moment to go into deep remorse about her past behavior, stating that she could no longer relate to her former self, yet feeling that no no apology could adequately convey her regret for her past actions. Getting back on track, Jay explains the time when she and SAD created the alternate accounts Redacted User and Bucket Brainrot at the collective age of 19, while purposely separating them from their main accounts. These accounts, which were deleted over a year before the document's writing, originally featured mild content before progressing to more suggestive and explicit material. They maintained appropriate warning labels and tags throughout. The accounts eventually expanded to Twitter and continued until late 2023, when activity gradually ceased. A private server was established on September 5th, 2022 as a more convenient alternative to switching between the staff server and the group chat. An approximate year later, M2, age 17, was invited to join, with no one willing to address the age concern. But it was in July 2023 when M1 had finally revealed that they were indeed still a minor, though by this time, M2 had reached legal age. Jay admits to taking a negligent approach by not removing M1 due to the awkwardness and their inactivity. This brought Jay into a series of complicated more discussions with Zenn.
I don't know how to explain.
Because of Shiva's situation, SAD-ist, made sexual comments about DZZS, if that makes any sense.
Am I a groomer? LMFAO, I don't know. Am I a stereotypical Discord admin?
Jay strongly denies any inappropriate intentions toward minors and provides evidence of rejecting flirtatious advances.
I will kiss you.
No.
Hey baby girl.
Die.
She also went on to show that she had made a couple statements asking people to not make character.ai versions of herself, as she was uncomfortable with the concept entirely. By November 2023, following the discovery of a groomer, Jay distanced herself from the TSP fandom and NSFW content entirely. While Zenn claimed that this behavior continued until June 2024, Jay presents evidence showing earlier cessation dates. She also denies allegations about NSFW activity in voice chat, showing that they had stopped in June 2023. Jay also explains that her archiving of NSFW channels was part of general server maintenance rather than an attempt to cover up evidence. She maintains that if concealment had been her goal, she would have just removed Zenn from the group chat, which she didn't do, also showing that at the time of writing the document, Zenn still had access even then. Jay acknowledges Zenn's temporary departure from the private server, though the timing remains unclear. In SAD's last perspective involving the NSFW server, she expresses genuine regret for not acting on her initial concerns about N2's age and joining the group despite her reservations. She confirms that she stopped NSFW content immediately after learning of M1's age and emphasizes that while the situation involved group dynamics, there were no romantic interests between those who participated. SAD concludes by noting that she had stopped these activities well before her fallout with Zenn, leading to general inactivity among all parties involved. And now we move on to Confrontation and Conversation. Jay learned of Zenn's intentions to make certain issues public in early June 2024, particularly involving M1, who was still a minor, yet reluctantly gave permission to be included anonymously in Zenn's document. The situation revolving the NSFW content Jay discovered was being portrayed by Zenn as more severe than it actually was. Upon understanding the situation, Jay and SAD immediately reached out and apologized to those involved. M1 initially didn't see the need for apologies, as such behavior and culture was normalized for them in their area. Regardless, M1 chose to forgive Jay and SAD, appreciating their accountability. M2 also became involved, sharing similar sentiments to M1. While the term grooming was initially suggested by the admin Blake, both M1 and M2 disagreed with this characterization. Even Zenn eventually dropped this label, though the mere suggestion of it made Jay nervous about how it would be perceived publicly. M1 later approached Jay, expressing their desire to not be involved even anonymously, fearfully claiming that they would kneel and beg Zenn not to publicize it.
I don't know where Blake wants to go with this, but I do not want it publicized.
This led Jay and SAD to consider M1's wishes for privacy. Blake joined in on their efforts to keep the situation private, but despite these efforts, Zenn ultimately made everything public. A group discussion occurred between Jay, SAD, and Blake about the NSFW content shared among minors. Jay provided a detailed explanation of the accusations, while SAD shared her perspective. This conversation convinced Blake that making the situation public would be inadvisable, but what Blake did advise was that apologies should be given to those who were affected. Jay and SAD had already apologized to M1 and planned to do the same with M2. They also intended to apologize to Zenn, but M1's fears of Zenn's potential reactions deterred them. Escalation transpired when Jay blocked Zenn on various social media platforms except Discord. In retaliation, Zenn prepared a document containing skewed information, though Blake managed to prevent its immediate release. M1 also attempted to convince Zenn not to make anything public. This resulted in Zenn confiding in another admin who was anonymous in her document but later revealed by Jay to be Sky. M1 and Zenn had a confrontation where M1 insisted on privacy, but Zenn, driven by a desire to do right by the victims, dismissed the request. This led both M1 and M2 to cut ties with Zenn. In September, Zenn announced her intention to release the document to the admins. She claimed that Blake had been inactive for 3 months, though this was incorrect as Blake had been investigating the situation. Following Blake's suggestion, Jay and SAD went ahead and sent their apologies to Zenn. Jay sent both apologies since SAD couldn't contact Zenn directly. Zenn initially initially delayed reading the apologies, but later responded with misinterpretations of Jay's words. The timing of the apologies had also become a point of contention, though Jay explained that it was due to her busy schedule. That, and the delay in initial apologies, was attributed to M1 and M2's requests. Both M1 and M2 had feared potential consequences of direct contact between Jay and SAD and Zenn. M2 later clarified that they hadn't intended to completely prevent interaction, only wanting to encourage caution. Similarly, M1 explained their panic-driven messages had unintentionally suggested complete avoidance. Jay maintained that while Zenn deserved an apology, protecting M1 and M2's mental well-being was also crucial. This concern proved valid when Zenn later confronted M1, although 10 days after this confrontation, Zenn came back to apologize for her NSFW involvement. Jay then provided clarification about the NSFW situation, explaining that while the groomer incident didn't stop them from simping over fictional characters, they gradually ceased all NSFW-related content. She emphasized that she wasn't making excuses, but rather explaining the context. From SAD's perspective, while apologetic about Zenn's victimhood, she felt indifferent due to them being on bad terms. Regardless, she maintained accountability and had apologized to all victims involved, with said victims accepting her apology, although the situation had evolved beyond simple resolution. The role of Sky became significant as well when Jay attempted to communicate with her. Sky approached the situation from the perspective of being uninformed despite claiming to be the only active admin. The conversation between Jay and Sky was ultimately unproductive, as Sky had already made up her mind about the situation, showing her support for Zenn. Jay believed Sky's influence was actually crucial in Zenn's decision to publish the document, and this event marked a turning point in the situation's publicity. Blake's involvement also became more complex as they tried to maintain neutrality while also upholding M1 and M2's wishes for privacy, with them showcasing the complexity of the situation by mentioning the victims, specifically M1, how Zenn initially reached out to them and keeping them out of the spotlight in her document.
And erasing them completely from your narrative will make you seem like only the victim when you are both the victim and perpetrator.
When Jay and SAD learned of arguments between Blake and Zenn, they provided clarification as requested. Jay presented evidence contradicting Zenn's narrative about behavior correction. Blake continued by expressing concern about staff identifying the mutuals, but Zenn had already refused to keep the matter private. This led to further complications in maintaining anonymity, with Blake claiming that Zenn could remain anonymous herself, being able to
run away from the consequences with a new account.
Blake had spent 3 months gathering perspectives from all parties. They acknowledged Zenn's victimhood while maintaining that it didn't justify violating others' privacy. Despite Blake's attempts at clarification, Zenn interpreted their actions as prioritizing Jay and SAD's supporters. Despite that, Blake maintained their neutral stance while addressing various misconceptions, such as the incomparability to Wilbur's situation in this one, as well as clarifying administrative powers and processes wherever it didn't make sense to Zenn. The results of these particular events brought about no resolutions, despite multiple attempts at mediation. Next is discussing Checker's document. The first section addresses a situation involving suggestive content in SAD's staff server, specifically in a public simping channel that contained an animating kissing gif which was used for matching profile pictures. Checkerbox, a former moderator, claimed that this channel influenced minors to engage in similar behavior, while Jay admitted to not managing the channel effectively before its eventual deletion by Zenn in mid-2023. Jay acknowledged limited recollection of the channel's content beyond people kissing and attractive men, and noted that she and others had stopped using it since 2022. The second section details Checkerbox's personal experience of being groomed at age 16 by an 18 to 19-year-old individual who encouraged them to engage with NSFW content. The situation escalated when Checker was caught using a staff Twitter account to access said content, leading to increased hostility from the administration team. This incident compounded existing tensions, as some server members had already questioned Checker's moderator role, claiming that they were just being mod for power. Checkerbox provided context about their blunt behavior due to personal drama while facing organized efforts to have them demoted. The situation became more complex when Checkerbox revealed that they were dealing with severe personal issues, including an instance where Jay's perspective on the situation reveals that when staff had learned about Checkerbox's grooming experience, they initially offered support. However, the discovery of Checkerbox's misuse of the staff Twitter account led to restrictions and disciplinary actions. Jay and other admins became increasingly concerned about Checker's mental health and concerning behavior, ultimately suggesting that they step down temporarily. During their interactions, Checkerbox experienced emotional breakdowns and displayed self-deprecating behavior, despite Jay's attempts to help. Jay later shared screenshots of their conversations, though every one of Checker's messages were omitted, and instead just read, "Redacted for privacy, redacted for privacy, redacted for privacy." This was due to the contents of the messages being personal. Jay also explained that her sternly worded messages stemmed from frustration with Checker's behavior rather than an intent to villainize. The third section reveals that the controversy extended to involve Blake, whom Checkerbox initially trusted more than other staff members. Checkerbox later felt betrayed upon discovering that Blake was working with Jay, SAD, and Zenn to gather information about them. While Checkerbox knew Blake would share some information, they hoped certain emotionally charged statements made during periods of stress would remain private. They also described feeling like a dehumanized animal because of the staff's coordinated approach to handling their situation, comparing themselves to a creature in a cage that if they irritated too much would become feral. This distrust was particularly significant as Blake had been their primary point of comfort after previous trauma. Regardless, Jay explained that Blake's involvement was strategically chosen to create a less stressful communication channel, as Checkerbox had expressed discomfort with direct interaction with both her and Zenn. While Jay maintained that her actions were within her administrative duties and didn't warrant an apology, she acknowledged that her direct approach may have caused hurt. She expressed understanding of Checker's perspective while ultimately standing firm on her position. And finally, the closing statements. In the closing statement, Jay acknowledges that she and SAD have thoroughly addressed their situation and grievances with Zenn. Jay emphasizes that through the perspectives of Blake, M1, M2, and their experiences with Zenn, along with additional context, they provided a comprehensive understanding of events. She maintains that while the document acknowledges their biases, they aim to remain objective and aren't using it to justify their actions, but rather to explain and learn from them. Jay gives a personal note in a last view on Zenn's document, coming from the perspective that it seems to have stemmed from frustration after their falling out, rather than being a document advocating for the victims involved. Jay's final thoughts express deep remorse for her past actions and mistakes. While she acknowledges various contributing factors, like her ignorance and cultural environment, she emphasizes that these don't excuse her actions. She stresses that the document's purpose is to provide complete context and prevent misunderstandings, rather than defend their actions. Jay closes her statement by saying that she is willing to carry that cross
publicly and privately. I can only continue to make amends to the people I've hurt. Over time, I hope everyone gets to heal from this.
In SAD's final thoughts, she addresses the timeline from May 2022 to June 2023, noting that SAD never raised concerns about the private server during their entire friendship. While acknowledging her own faults, SAD questions why Zenn didn't confront her directly, given their previous open communication about other concerns. Regardless, she expresses remorse and details her attempts to make amends with those she had wronged, including the unsuccessful attempts to apologize to Zenn. SAD closes her statement by requesting that others not harass anyone mentioned in the document, as she doesn't condone those things.
And the people involved had already been through much during this entire situation.
Lastly, we have the staff responses, which also include Zenn. For the purposes of respecting admins and their identities, I will be massively summarizing specific situations as to not be specific about which staff said what, but will make it clear that most of them unanimously agreed that SAD, Jay, and anyone else on their side is in the wrong. One staff member strongly disputed Jay's claims about keeping the staff informed, with multiple other staff members stating that they were completely in the dark about ongoing issues until Zenn explained the situation in a separate server. The staff team also revealed that some moderators were actually under 16 years old, contradicting Jay's original statements, and there were concerns about the public jail channel where inappropriate content was being posted. Most staff members, including Sky, who made an official announcement in SAD's main server, sided with Zenn and expressed disgust with Jay, SAD, and Blake's actions. The staff's perception was heavily influenced by the information they received from Zenn and how the situation was handled. SAD's server itself was revealed to have originated as a teenager-created space that later had to implement stricter roles when he became partnered. Zenn had also responded to Jay and SAD's document in a series of threads on Twitter, addressing various accusations, explaining that while she had acknowledged making mistakes, she felt that her actions were being exaggerated. She emphasized that her monitoring of accounts wasn't obsessive, but rather came from genuine concern and interest, while also revealing her own vulnerability during these events. She also clarifies that her relationship with Jay and SAD wasn't parasocial or one-sided.
As some have suggested / taken from the documents, our friendship got to the point where I would have traveled to the Philippines to see them both. Ideas and such were discussed, but never confirmed. All of us hung out almost every day. We shared very personal information. They have my address. We were that close.
She specifically apologized to M1 and M2, noting that her reputation had been damaged by Jay and SAD's document. She also explained that she included others' experiences because the document would have been less substantial with only her perspective. She also provided evidence through screenshots showing Blake's communication with admins about intentionally keeping staff uninformed. The situation with M1 and M2 was particularly complex, with Zenn addressing her awareness of M1's minor status and providing screenshots as evidence. She also discussed her relationship with M2, noting that they had previously ended on good terms terms after M2 apologized for certain comparisons, though current feelings remain uncertain. She expressed concern about how Jay and SAD presented M1 and M2's messages in their document, suggesting that they were structured to favor their perspective. She also found it puzzling that Jay and SAD had shifted their stance on certain actions from grooming to treading the lines of grooming. Her information sharing was defended as being primarily focused on awareness and safety rather than pure gossip. Communication breakdowns were also evident throughout the situation, particularly with Blake, who repeatedly left messages unread and chose to handle things alone despite available support systems. The inability to communicate with SAD was attributed to technical limitations of not sharing mutual servers. Zenn also found their apologies inadequate, describing them as poorly worded and hollow, while noting that they downplayed her experiences despite her taking accountability. She said that while she admitted to her own faults in her document, Jay and SAD's response painted her as a perpetrator while minimizing their own actions. Ultimately, Zenn's document was supported by multiple people, recognized how the situation was impacting various minors and communities. SAD's initial request to Zenn for complete silence about the situation contradicted their later claims. Still, Zenn felt threatened and panicked, leading to an abrupt goodbye message in the staff server. The situation was further complicated by the leaking of Sky's identity, who SAD had intentionally kept anonymous in her document. Despite the complicated nature of the situation, Zenn claims to have maintained her focus on protecting privacy while still providing necessary evidence. She concluded her threads by discouraging further back and forth, as these are just
clarifications and important notes I and others believe should be clarified on and expressed. Any questions I will try to answer. However, I personally do not wish to discuss this matter any further.
And as of now, that is officially where the drama ends. Granted, there are still some other parts undiscussed, like the responses from Jay and more of the staff, but it's more or less the same, and I don't want to be rolling around in circles, so it's better to just get the gist of it towards the end. Now, this section is more about my personal thoughts, and to recap the entirety of these events, at least from how I see it, what basically happened was Zenn, realizing the gravity of what she and the others had done, and feeling the need to address these wrongs along with everyone else who was involved with them. This resulted in disrespecting the wishes of those who didn't even want to be looped into this controversy, as both sides continue to escalate the situation. I believe Zenn's breaking point came not from receiving no acknowledgement, but being pushed away and further being seen as an outcast, even though in reality she had caused all these things to happen to her because of the way she was moving. She may have not seen the harm in her actions because it felt like she was doing the right thing, but her right intentions don't justify her wrongdoings. I also feel like the others, including both Jay and SAD, felt hostility from her because of her tone deafness and not understanding how exactly to approach them, so she comes off as weird and undeserving of their time. On the outside, when you look at it from Zenn's perspective, this makes Jay and SAD look like egotistical, avoidant scoundrels, and it's this narrative that wasn't entirely shot down by them because of how much they avoided the situation as a whole, despite there being several reasons for doing so. And while Zenn certainly was moving weird, it doesn't mean that they can get away with not seriously atoning for what they had done, and distancing themselves from the internet on their mains, but secretly being away on other accounts comes off as scummy, and also hints that they may have something to hide, and that's yet another reason why most of the staff are on Zenn's side in the situation. But the thing is, all of them, and I don't say this maliciously, are cowards. Everyone involved, Zenn, SAD, Jay, you name them, they've all shown cowardice behavior, but that's because they aren't the type of people to get involved into this type of controversy. They aren't used to it, and they really don't want it or anything it has to offer. But as much of a coward as they are, Zenn rises above the rest in terms of confidence, as she managed to gather the strength to turn this not into a conversation, but another controversy that many people have already forgotten about. And it's that fact that upsets me, because in my opinion, the conversation shouldn't be about whether SAD-ist is a groomer or whether Zenn is a disgruntled leech. No. If there's going to be a conversation, it should extend past that into something much more important. And in this case, I believe that the conversation should be about the normalization of NSFW content being shoved into the hands and eyes of minors with easy accessibility. Personally, I think that from SAD and Jay's side, using your culture as a reason to why you've been normalized to that content is not only shameful and disgraceful, but also misleading. Normalization of adult content to minors isn't restricted to a single place of origin, nor does it reside specifically where you live. It thrives best through the internet, the same internet on which these children get groomed into thinking that content is normal media consumption. This isn't a rare occurrence either. If you or someone you may know have grown up on the internet as a child, there's a high chance that you've come across this type of content. Whether it's happened once or 100 times, it still has high altering capabilities. This can result in behaviors of which normalize not only the content, but the behaviors themselves. Zenn is a victim of this. Jay is a victim of this. SAD is a victim of this. So is everyone else involved in the NSFW server and group chat. To blame your culture or a victim of this normalization defeats this bigger theme, and instead reverse the situation into just some drama that some ill-intentioned commentator can make a 12-minute low-effort video off of. That is yet another reason why I feel compelled to make this video. Instead of letting this just be another controversy that gets forgotten about and only mentioned to make SAD look bad, as most creator controversies are, I want this one to start a conversation. One that, once over, we will have made progress. One that won't paint SAD-ist or Zenn as villains, but as victims of the system. Victims that they very much are. Not only that, but one that can also bring the question of what we can do collectively to ensure that something like this never happens again. Because if it can happen to a figure as big and influential as SAD, it can happen to anyone else, and probably has. Although that's part of the convo that we have to get to later. And by the way, just because they're victims doesn't mean they're exempt from all the wrong they've done on either side. For instance, both SAD and Jay just got up and out of here like there's no tomorrow. And although they had pretty much explained everything in the document, it felt like they still might have been hiding something, especially knowing their ability to practically shapeshift their personas at their own leisure. And as you will learn in the next section, I might have been onto something. Now, some people may think that this drama slowly faded out of public view, and this is true. However, I've observed that its effects still linger even months after the drama had occurred. So much so, that according to Zenn, who since also moved on from the situation, made one last thread back in December, talking about how SAD-ist apparently migrated to another fresh identity called Blabberoo. Zenn initially used this as a point to prove several of hers, but looking into it myself, I found that it very well could actually be her. In the same thread, Zenn talks about how she was made aware of this all after being notified by someone who knew about it, with her insinuating that the timing was suspicious, as it apparently became active after their argument in May. This same alt, which has a Ko-Fi, has seen a lot more activity than her own Patreon on her main. Zenn sees this as disingenuous, as SAD had mentioned in her last Discord announcement that she would be stepping away from socials indefinitely, but seems to be hiding on this new persona. She also saw it as hypocritical since Blake accused her of creating her own account to
run away from the consequences.
Personally, I think it would be disingenuous for SAD not to be taking a break from social media, and although I had originally had doubts about Blabberoo actually being SAD-ist in disguise, the evidence presents itself well and aligns with the narrative that it is her. For one, in the document, Jay mentioned how her and SAD had made accounts separate from their main personas, as to not turn their main audience off on their own personal content. I believe this was put rather lightly, as that same move could and still can be made for many different reasons. Another thing is SAD's overall anxious nature, which has been shown inside and out of the document, and would explain the need to hide away into another account. I won't draw any parallels between the behavior of both accounts, because that's just reaching at that point. But speculation won't help either, so in order to find out where SAD could potentially be hiding, I came up with my first plan to get into contact with Blab. Originally, I thought I could ask Jay to get into contact with SAD, but Jay had already said that once the situation had been cleared up, she would be stepping away from the internet indefinitely, cutting off all interaction and no longer being active anywhere. This made it seem like I reached a stump at first, but then I came to the conclusion that if we were to talk, she would have likely been the middleman between me and SAD, and I'd much rather do without that. So I searched around for someone who might have a lead on Blab, and that's when I remembered that there was one person in particular who might just have the answers. For the sake of anonymity, we'll call her Emma. Emma is the one who created the original server for SAD all those years ago. All these years later, after hearing about Zenn's situation and how Jay and SAD responded, she decided to stick up for Zenn and her side. I thought maybe she might have known a way to get into contact with SAD, so I joined her server for refugees, since SAD's server had been deleted, and made a ticket. It wasn't long before she had responded to the ticket herself, and we both moved the conversation to DMs. It was here that Emma had revealed that she was unable to contact her, and everyone else in the moderator team who had intentionally denounced her couldn't either. Emma herself had not been on good terms with SAD ever since, and her closest contact to her was Jay, who was avoiding the situation as a whole, so that route would likely lead nowhere. Our conversation only lasted a few hours, but I basically came out of it with my original feelings about SAD and this alt confirmed. During it, we also talked about Tubbo, as he had made a promotion post following the drama with what seemed like SAD-ist animation, but her name was nowhere to be seen. This, of course, made others speculate about this amazing animation that hadn't been credited. I actually sent an email to a creator by the name of Owen's Juice about this, but they never responded. In hindsight, if SAD really was the one behind this animation, I believe the conversation between her and Tubbo had to at least gone something like this. Despite that, a majority of our conversation was actually about how distant and avoidant SAD was being during the drama and even after. At some point, it seemed like I'd never even be able to get into contact with her because of her pressing desire to keep things under wraps, despite that coming off as an awful defense strategy. This resistance only made me more motivated to seek out answers for why she's moving like this in the first place. So the following day, I came up with my first plan, that being to reach out to anyone who was in contact with Blab so they could possibly transfer contact. At first, I wanted to see if there was a way to message Blab myself, but that wasn't possible, as I didn't see any way to contact like them on Tumblr and couldn't message them on Ko-Fi unless I was a member. So I decided to reach out to some people who publicly supported Blab on their Ko-Fi. The first one I reached out to told me that they never talked, as they only supported Blab's Ko-Fi for the content. I insisted a referral, but they instantly shut me down. For the second one I reached out to, I made sure to tell them that I could give them specifics only if they were willing to help. They accepted at first, but then soon realized that they would have to DM Blab themselves for me, which they then let me know they weren't comfortable with. They referred me to Blab's Tumblr, which I didn't know how to messaging system, but when I checked it out, that was a dead end too. That meant that the only way to talk to Blab would to become a member, which means I had to pay for it. It was clear they weren't exactly comfortable with messaging someone they haven't even talked to at all, which is understandable, especially when that person is potentially involved in a situation they had no idea about. So I finished up the exchange and thanked them for their time. And I didn't know it right away, but this interaction alone led me to come up with a very sneaky plan, although it came with a price, literally. You see, near the end of the interaction with the second supporter, I mentioned a similar situation in which I had to pay $6.35 to get the attention of a streamer. What I didn't tell them was that this streamer was actually Boostford, who, if you watched the previous video, would know that he absolutely ignored me. But his chat gave me attention, and that was the closest I ever got to another interaction with Boostford. Well, besides the fact that we immediately fought after. Ever since, I gave myself a code to never pay just to interact with someone. But just like here in Dev's contract, I'm breaching it, because I realized that I really only had to pay $1 so I could message Blab myself. I could see why the anti-pay-to-win movement is the way it is. Anyway, I went over this plan with Emma, and it pretty much went like this.
So, what's this?
This right here is the plan. First things first, I create a document that links to another document, which has a tab that reveals who I am, what my intentions are, and what I request of Blab under the impression that they are SAD-ist.
Which they are.
And once I'm done with the document, I create an account on Ko-Fi that doesn't give me away by abbreviating my channel's name from Daniel Trucks to DTX.
What? That's stupid.
Let me cook. Now, after the account is created, I'll pretend to be a fan of their Gravity Falls comics with a suggestion of what they should do next. If this piques their interest, I'll send over the first document, which contains the second document, which contains the content in the second tab.
So, if I'm getting this correct, you put the content in the second tab inside of the second document, which is contained by the first document, so they can't see the content as that would give you away?
Yep.
Huh. I guess that works.
I'm pretty sure it will. Let's just hope that it works out in my favor. With that, the plan was officially ready to be put into action. All I had to do was wait for the perfect moment. Ugh. In the meantime...
Daniel.
Anonymous.
What do you plan on accomplishing this?
Shouldn't you already know?
How many times do I have to tell you? Just because you're my vessel doesn't mean I can read your mind. I can only watch closely, observe you, and then make a move wherever I see fit.
Yeah, well, if you weren't sleepy most of the time, you'd actually be able to see what I'm trying to do here.
It's not my fault when your life is so uninteresting. The only thing that keeps me entertained the longest is your thirst for power, and your unbridled hatred for women.
What?
Oh, don't act like you don't have a clue. Time and time again, you get yourself into all these situations with the same outcome. Unwanted, unnecessary, unneeded. You think you escaped yourself and made a change, but little do they know that inside there is that same insecure, immature, socially inept boy you claim to have erased all these years later.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb, Daniel. You painting me as the villain while admitting your own wrongs does you no good. It means nothing. Not when you haven't changed.
No, I've changed. I'm no longer that same weirdo that I used to be. And I don't hate women.
You know that's a lie, and that no lies are of the truth, Daniel. You're more of a threat to women than I ever was, which is impressive, but even more so, this whole situation is nothing but a stepping stone to you. You don't actually care about anyone involved. You just want to feel and have the power, the ability to tell any story you want.
No, that's not true. Everyone deserves to be heard, no matter what side they're on, without being misrepresented. If I didn't care about that, I wouldn't have reached out to anyone at all, and I will make sure that I talk to SAD-ist and get her perspective as well.
You really think that you'll be able to talk to her? On the slight chance you do, all it will take is a lick of power to further corrupt you. You've never changed. Your colors are just becoming truer and truer each day that goes by. Some people are even catching on now. I'm sure it won't be long before everyone realizes.
You're wrong.
Whatever. The only reason I sleep is because I know how this all ends. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end well for you. It never has.
Speaking of sleep, that's what I need to be getting right now. Good night.
You can hide away from it, but eventually you will be found.
You're trying to get to me, trying to use me. And for what? For what purpose? Don't you get it? I want this all to disappear. I don't know what you plan on achieving with this, but one thing I know for certain is that I won't let you get it so easily. This mask Do you want to see what's behind it? That's right. I don't even know who I am anymore, what I was supposed to be. It's all gone. And yet you want to take more than I can bear. Well then, go ahead. Why are you waiting?
On the following Wednesday, I paid for membership and then unlocked the messages. Not wasting any time, I immediately sent my first message. A little while later, and Blab responded. So, posing as a fan of theirs, I suggested some ideas for what they should do next, and that made them curious. Going along the lines of that, I tried figuring out how links worked so I could send them the link to the document, but they stopped replying for a few days. However, that didn't stop me from pressing on under the assumption that they were just busy with college. But then, the unexpected happened.
Hey, sorry for the late reply. Could you hand the link over?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you think.
It's a lot, but I appreciate your concern. I'll try to answer your questions as best as I can.
Wait, what? Seriously? Just like that?
Yeah.
No threats, no ghosting, not even a fight? Just straight conversation. Well then, here's my Discord. Ko-Fi's messaging system is pretty weird.
Oh, I haven't opened my main account in a while. Would emails be alright?
Sure. Wait, some people might think that the emails are fake. I mean, you could set yourself as offline as we talk. Also, I know you're busy with college, and there's only a few questions, so it shouldn't take that long.
Alright, I'll send you a friend request on Sunday. Thank you for being understanding and patient.
And thanks for being polite and mature. I'll talk to you then. Well, I was not expecting that. Who knew people could be cooperative? I literally came up with concepts and plans for every outcome but the best one. Not complaining though, I'll gladly take that along with the fact that Blab revealed that they were indeed SAD-ist. And with that comes... Alright, so, I have a few questions I'd like for you to respond to open-endedly. I changed them up a bit so you can provide more context and explanations.
Okay, I'll try my best.
First question is about Blabberoo. As a whole, there's a lot of mystery surrounding it, and nobody really knows what you exactly intended with it, but Zenn sees it as a scapegoat, just another persona you apparently made use of after the argument back in May of last year. Is there anything more to this notion, or are those the all's true origins?
In a way, there's a bit of truth to that. Although the main reason I started using it was to have the freedom to make queer media, as there's people I know IRL who don't approve of it. It wouldn't have been made otherwise.
So the account was created as a way to express more personal freedom rather than the argument?
Yeah, that's pretty much the origins of it. Sorry if my answers are too short. I'm just a bit tired from doing schoolwork today.
That's completely understandable. Some questions will require more than others.
Thank you. Please go on.
Well, I actually wanted to touch up on the media thing for a bit. I was curious for the longest time after seeing Jay talk about how she grew up in a conservative Christian household. Her family would have likely shunned her had they known about what went on. But for you, I was never sure if your family is similar. And I'm also unsure about what your culture is. Care to clarify?
I believe I was the one that said that, and yes, that would be the same for me. I can't speak for others, but I haven't personally spoken with anyone in my family about it. So I never found out about how they would react. But based on their disdain, I don't think I want to know. Sometimes I even thought I would get disowned if they found out. When it comes to living in a Christian country where hitting your children is normalized, they tend to become distant and prioritize their own safety. It's unfortunate, really, even in a culture where family is important, because it's so easy to single out someone as a deviant.
What country do you come from?
The Philippines.
Huh, so you're Filipino?
Yep.
I actually knew someone who was Filipino as well. His parents were very strict, and also probably the reason I can't even contact him anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I know a lot of people who have really strict parents.
That was likely a long time ago for me. But hearing you say that makes the dots connect a lot more. I mean, you all were doing a very specific type of shipping, so it figures that it was more of a guilty pleasure, knowing that it would get you frowned upon by your peers.
Yeah, pretty much like that. It's probably just my family I'm more concerned about.
So if I got this right, the alt activity is loosely connected with Zenn in that argument in May, but it's more so you can create and post queer content more comfortably under an account that has no correlation with your main?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I feel like most people who know about both of your accounts feel like you're just hiding away and being extremely avoidant. I mean, ever since the drama happened, you've quote-unquote stepped away from your accounts, despite the fact that you're still active on social media under a different name. And this leads into the second question, because beside the drama, why has the thought of deleting your main Discord server always been in your mind?
I wasn't the one who made it. The server was made by someone else, and at the time I didn't think much of it and let people have their fun with it. We had our fair share of infighting with staff, and some fights I wasn't involved with, but eventually the admins decided to transfer ownership to me. I heard complaints from the moderator team regarding taking care of the server, but also told not to do anything regarding them, but the stress persisted in staff. The staff would also occasionally joke about the server's deletion, but sometimes it felt genuine. Because of this, I wasn't too active to not cause any more issues. And it made me think of not wanting a server under my name at that point. It seems like the admins couldn't do much because I was in charge. And in hindsight, I think it's best that they have a brand new one without me, as they made their choice and feel much more free in it.
And I'm guessing the drama was the cherry on top that furthered your decision to delete it.
Pretty much.
That goes into something else I was thinking of. You see, a pattern that I've noticed throughout the entire drama, before and after, is how naturally anxious you are. This seems to be a common factor that's resulted in events playing out the way they do. I've actually gone as far back to when the server was made, and even there, you were talking about how nervous you initially were about the server's creation, but you did appreciate the support it helped you garner at the time. And this made me wonder, do you happen to struggle with anxiety? You seem to have this nervous energy, even when you're in the slightest trouble.
Well, as of recent times, I felt like I did develop severe anxiety issues. Even when talking about these things now makes my body react physically, and not in a good way. Even if I don't think negatively of you, I noticed that this was a thing back when certain issues had been brought up, ones that weren't related to the drama. These issues began eating me up from the inside, slowly making me hollow, constantly bothering and heckling me. Without rest, it makes doing everything so much harder, making me restless. And as if these issues weren't enough, this server started to have problems. One thing after another, the dominoes started falling, and I had to be the center of it. I always was the center of it all, and I was too dumb to realize before it had affected me too. I wished that I got it checked out, as I still haven't been diagnosed with anything, but it's hard to do so, especially in a country where mental health isn't of that much importance.
Whoa, I definitely want to get back to that later. That's important to acknowledge, and I feel similarly, although I'm sure everyone else was also scared in some way because of what happened. But that question was more on the side of my personal curiosity, and your response actually leans into the next question, because that asks whether you made any changes since November with Blabberoo, or honestly anything else. Basically, what change have you made since the situation?
Changes in Blabberoo? Or just in general?
Both, but more on the general side.
Let me see. After November, I've contemplated whether or not to stay inactive on my main account, and just let it slowly die out. I also thought about starting anew with my other account. That's also the main reason why I've been more active on there. But I did take notice of how there are still people who support me on my main, and I want to repay them for their kindness. I haven't made a clear decision yet, as I'm primarily focusing on things IRL, but I might slowly get back into it. Though I don't know if that will be on Twitter, not sure how long that decision will take, but as of now, I don't think I'm ready.
Huh. You actually answered my fourth question, which asks about whether or not you'd consider making your main audience aware of Blab, or even consider becoming active on those accounts again. I definitely believe you should put more thought into it. Although if I were to give my own 2 cents, I'd say that you're definitely capable of reestablishing a connection with them. I mean, most of them already agree that the main narrative was spun way out of proportion. Although I acknowledge that the spinning was done on both sides. Regardless, I'm glad you do acknowledge how much of a platform you have. From an outsider perspective, it seems as if you just threw your entire career away over a controversy that didn't amount to much in the grand scheme. In reality, there's so much more to be learned from all this, and people missed out on that. You created, inspired, and flourished a community of animators and supporters who kept you on your feet and helped you to get to where you are today. And without them, you wouldn't have been able to do that. Sure, you could just leave them all behind, but I feel like that would not only make you look more guilty, but also destroy the purpose and sense of community you once fostered. And yeah, there were lots of problems in an uncertain environment, which contributed to your declining mental state, but I don't believe that this situation should stop you from improving yourself and building your own community back up, or communities. There will always be better environments and people you can surround yourself with if you're willing to just give this thing another chance. So my advice for you is that you take the time you need, prioritize your work, reach out for help, and connect with the people you know will do you good mentally.
Daniel, I haven't really checked much about what most people have been saying, but what you said does give me a bit of hope. I sometimes forget how much of an impact I have. It makes me feel grateful, but also scared. There's a certain responsibility I have in the eyes of many. I sometimes think I'm not suited in catering to a community, although I am really grateful to those who stayed. There's only so much I can do with this power, because I'm limited. But I still want to give to the people, show them what I'm good at as my way of appreciation. I still want to create.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who look up to you, and if we're being honest, I also used to be one of them. I knew about you back when you had around 600 subscribers. I actually reanimated your underswap animation in another animation program.
Oh, what? That's insane. That feels so long ago, but thank you.
I mean, that was back in 2017. I was like 10 years old then. But I had idolized you, which I shouldn't have. I formed this weird parasocial relationship thinking that I had the right to brag about knowing who you were before you took off.
Oh.
I actually looked at a few of my messages on the server before it got deleted, and I came off as stingy and envious. I always wanted to talk to you. It got so bad that I got into a conflict with one of your staff members over it and got rightfully removed from your server. To me, it felt like I always had this connection to you because I was around before you got famous, even though you had literally no idea that I even existed.
It's alright. I do understand that to some extent.
You had this large following, something that I had always dreamed of, and regardless of my envy, I still wanted that acknowledgement from you. But now, all these years later, I've changed. I no longer idolize you or put you on a pedestal, and getting into the drama, looking into the situation only reaffirmed how I feel. And let me tell you, I see you not for your popularity or social standing, but as a flawed human being just as I am. And having that feeling not only for you, but everyone else involved, helped me navigate this a lot easier. Without being blinded by idolization, I see you for the person you actually are.
And I am honestly glad that you realize that. I really do appreciate that you do.
And it reminds me that under the egos of all these influencers and content creators is a human, and no amount of fame will ever draw away from their humanity.
That's true. Also, it's a good mindset to have.
Yeah, and you seem to acknowledge it best because you don't have an ego. You've shown yourself to be vulnerable and fragile, which most other people don't show. It may come off as ego because of how you seem to hide yourself, but it's only really just that. And that vulnerability reminds me of one of my videos. I believe around the same time I had you on a pedestal, I was also being weird to someone else. A few years later, I realized that I had a voice to call out and confront my past self. I made a video, and although I don't make exposed videos, that's ironically the closest because I called myself out and how I used to act. But in the same video, I mentioned mentioned how I changed and am no longer that person that I used to be. To be honest, I expected most of the comments to just brush over that part and call me a weirdo. I wasn't expecting any validation then, and certainly don't now. But this video was different. The majority of people had actually acknowledged the fact that I had changed in a positive way, and that surprised me because it let me know that not everyone is miserable or just drones out to get me and cancel me. And the biggest thing that came out of this is that is my most popular video as of now. A video in which I admit my past behavior with the acknowledgement of change and the intentions of moving on. All it took was me being honest, and no matter what type of feedback I received, I still went ahead and moved on from the situation. I know our situations can't be compared in severity, but they can in terms of honesty and change.
That simply means that you've grown, and I'm glad you shared that story, and that those people acknowledge that and are willing to see you improve.
I understand that there's more of a connection that I have with particular people in this situation, you being included. That makes it more important that I cover it, rather than some random commentator picking it up and twisting it for views.
From what I've seen, you're more understanding and actually willing to be open-minded and listen to different perspectives. And that is something I can appreciate.
Yeah, there are others out there who would have ran with this story in an effort to make you or Zenn look like villains without a second thought. These people would have taken advantage of your vulnerability just for their own gain. Absolutely despicable. That's why I made it my goal to do it the right way.
Honestly, I expected that inevitably happening, but I'm grateful that you've gone out of your way to do it right.
Would you let them take that advantage? I feel like you could just sense the energy and stop it there.
I'm not sure. I'm not usually confrontational, so there's a possible chance that could happen.
You're telling me that you just let anyone in this place? Sheesh, you gotta work on that. At least set boundaries so they know not to go too far.
Yeah, I'm aware. Are there any more questions you have, or can we wrap this up?
There's no more questions. Do you want to give a last statement for the video?
I'm not sure what else I could say, as I've already said what I said regarding all of this. All I really wanted was for everyone to move on and make peace with it.
That's fair. Thank you for your time.
Wait, Daniel.
Yeah? Hey Emma. Wow, it's been a little bit since we talked, huh? Let me know whenever you got this message. I got some exciting news.
Hey, I'm sorry I had to be this way, but I'd like for you to stop contacting me and my friends any further. Tomorrow marks the official 2 months since this situation has happened, and I fully believe that your video would tread up a very dead horse. I appreciate you wanting to gain people's insights and perspectives, but it does none of us any good. And personally, the whole thing you did in VC wasn't very convincing. It actually made me think this whole thing over. I mean, I hope you understand that your motivations remain in good intention, but the result you've prescribed did not. I don't feel comfortable being contacted for anything related to this, and cannot, at your behest, ask any of my friends to respond to you. Hopefully, you understand. Daniel?
Oh, yeah, I understand. Does that include Zenn? I feel like I would be biased for not telling her anything regarding this and my intentions.
If she hasn't made contact yet, then yes.
Well, I didn't reach out yet. You know, I actually respect your decision regarding this matter. Aside from this, I see you're all doing well and appear pretty content. I'm sure outside of this, we would all get along very well. Oh well, regardless, I'll accept your request. Thank you for your time.
Well, as expected, you creeped out the only lead you had. How are you going to get to Zenn now?
I won't. I have everything I need. Going to her would only waste my time. You know how she is.
And here I was thinking you were going to be unbiased.
They don't want me talking to her. It's for the best. Besides, I've already acquired the one thing I've been looking for this whole time.
And what is that?
The power to control the story the right way. I had it the whole time, but Sadist made me realize that I did. She made me realize how much power I had. Over her? Over them? Over you?
I called it. It's ironic that you set yourself on a journey to destroy the very thing you were deep down. Let me tell you something, boy. You're not ready for the storm that's coming down this road you're heading. Whatever happens here on out, you gotta stick with me if you even want a chance of surviving.
You're right about one thing, Anonymous. This isn't me.
Ugh, not this version of you again.
It's not even like that. I'm not dumb or trying to hide anything. I know the monster I can become, and it's a very slippery slope that may look enticing to others, but it's just not me. It's not what I believe is right. I'm not making this video to expose anyone. I just want to show people the truth. That same truth that they're too scared to come forward with, so everyone can finally move on without any of those people coming along to manipulate it.
That's the only reason you're doing any of this?
No, it's not just about that. It's also to start a conversation about idolization, about normalization culture. Oh, I could go on, but once the conversation's over, we move on. It's as simple as that.
You know how these people are. They won't simply let this go. The backlash, the documents, the revival. It'll all be too much.
Well, most people already see the truth for what it is. I'm just starting a conversation. I'm not trying to revive the drama. That's what most of them seem to get wrong. It'll only matter as much if they make it so. Otherwise, there shouldn't be a problem.
You don't get it. You are the problem, Daniel. And you're gonna face that fact someday.
Once all of this is over, the only way I'm facing is forward. Alright, so the last part of this outro is going to be clarification for a lot of things. Since the deadline for this video is really close to the release date, I am not going to be putting any animation here. So first and foremost, I remember Jay saying something about M1 and M2 not being included in the main conversation. The reason I included M1 and M2 was to not mislead anyone, because if they were to look at the actual document, they would see both of them. The next thing is me coming clean about the scripts, because most of them were fixed. And by fixed, I mean most of them literally had the words on the page. I remember explicitly saying that I would have it more natural and just have more pinned points, but this video was a lot, so I mostly recorded whatever I saw on the text that I wrote down. I know I said I would stick to a more natural way of narrating, but I just ended up doing the same thing again. Moving forward, I'm definitely gonna make it a priority to do more natural scripts, because it does sound weirder and the tone isn't as good as I want it to be if it was natural, so that is something I'm definitely gonna make sure to do. I also wanted to talk about SAD-ist and her undiagnosed anxiety. I mean, it's been a big conversation in this video, even during the interview, and that was done in January, so again, I was mostly just getting used to who SAD-ist was, which is why I asked certain questions the way I did. But yeah, that is definitely one of the factors that led SAD-ist to be the way she is. Something that surprised me was how much of an ego SAD-ist didn't have. I mean, as I said in the video, SAD-ist didn't even chase fame, but I feel like this led to a mindset of just loose consequences. As whatever happened, she just went with the flow of it, and that's led her to good places places, and that's also led her to bad places. I mean, when it comes to her lack of taking accountability, she still needs to make an effort to change that about herself, because seriously, taking accountability is what she should be doing as an adult, and I feel like that's very important. Another thing that I want to get out there is that Zenn made this whole thing essentially free game, as in any commentator can come around and just take it and spin it however they want to. And I acknowledge that as well, and I did my best to make sure that I got as many messages that could be used positively out of it, instead of just, you know, a random commentator coming around and making a 12-minute video like I was talking about. I also want to say that I'm not a beacon of perfectly good morality. The only thing I wanted to do was switch the subject from something unproductive to something productive. If we can be efficient with this type of subject, instead of saying SAD-ist is a groomer or Zenn is just leeching off the situation, I wanted to do more, and I believe this video will do more, especially if people really see what I was trying to convey. And also the interview, man, it was done in January, so I was still getting used to who SAD-ist was, which is why I asked her what country did she come from, and like all this other stuff that was completely just, yeah, I definitely do need a second opinion, or even more opinions, and I actually might just offer that on my membership. Like, as part of the work in progress, y'all can see who I'm talking to when I'm talking to them. Definitely have to come up with that, but hey, if that interests you, then you can become a member and then we can see what we could work out. I also wanted to mention too that the role of Sky and Blake were definitely more involved, but honestly seem minimal in the grand scheme. When it comes to the role of Sky, I feel like Sky helped more on Zenn's part, and we heard less about that because Zenn obviously wanted Sky to be anonymous, but Blake was actually taking months of investigation into the situation, not responding to Zenn when they should have. It definitely seemed more biased on Jay and Sad's side, but they still were effective in the way of making Zenn not release the document at first, so there's that as well. Also, a big problem I came across is that I played way too much into my character, which is why you could see how much I was yapping, just trying to get everything I could in for the interview with SAD-ist. And even with the confrontation with Emma, I just changed it up for storytelling purposes. And it's actually important to distinguish that that isn't actually how I act. That was my character that I was expressing in that interaction. But I honestly would have been better off if I had just taken it seriously and had a serious conversation with Emma, instead of just focusing on the lore. So yeah, I definitely could have done better because I did not like the way I performed for some areas, not all areas, because I did do good some places. On the bright side, I did actually manage to convey the story properly, so even if people see this and see how I was and how I was acting, that still conveys the message that I wanted to convey. And as I'll see in the future videos of the series, if they think this is weird, then man, it's gonna get a lot weirder. Finally, what I don't want to only come from this video is just more drama. I really do not want more drama coming out of this, like with anyone trying to play into the negativity of it with taking it and misconstruing it or debunking it and not clarifying, so it looks more like it's exposing me or something like that. Because if I did get something wrong, I will address that. I just personally do not desire for the main message of the video to be overshadowed by even more drama. That is what I'm doing my best to avoid. Overall, I really just want my main message of the video to be highlighted. So if y'all have anything you want to say about this, then just leave it in the comments. I'll definitely be looking there to see the feedback and everything. Alright, that's it for now. So thank you for watching and have a great day.